All right, everyone, welcome back into another NFL prop betting video. We are going to be breaking down the best bets here for the Sunday night matchup here between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. Let's go ahead and get into it. So we started here with the game total and the point spread. It is a 4-point spread in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs winning, which I ultimately would agree with there. I do think there's an opportunity to potentially bet on the Texans money line, because it is kind of a toss-up at 4 total points. Both defenses are really elite. It just is going to come down to the offensive play, and I definitely think we would give the Chiefs the advantage there, but maybe it comes down to a little bit of special teams as well. So just if you were going to bet on the Texans to cover at 4 points, I would just rather go with their money line bet. Like, you can get them at plus 180 on some sites. So just work on that out. That's not necessarily a bet that I'm going to do, but again, if you were going to bet on the Texans to cover, I think that'd be the route I would go. Very low game total in this game as well, 41.5 total points. I think that's two-tiered. Earlier on in the week, the weather actually looked to be a little bit worse than what it is. Seemingly clear skies, and also the temperature is going to be above 20, so not really impacting the game all too much. They can make it a little bit more difficult to throw and catch the football, but not ultimately anything that's going to change that much. I think this is the correct line for the game. It could be more of an offensive game. I mean, Houston's Texans offense has been a little bit better recently. And obviously the Chiefs have been clicking with Rashid Rice being back, and they're healthy. So I'm just going to stay away from the point total, and I don't necessarily see anything for a spread or money line for that matter as well. Doesn't really impact any of the prop bets that we want to get to, and I actually think it actually helps a couple of the prop bets I like. And I actually think the best betting opportunities that we are getting in this game are with the 2 starting running backs. So Woody Marks being one of them, obviously for Houston. Now, he saw less work than he had the previous 2 weeks. And if you're just looking at the box score, you might say, oh, well, that's because Nick Chubb ended up having a good game. It actually might be partially due to that. Don't get me wrong. Nick Chubb got an opportunity and looked good with that opportunity. The reason why Nick Chubb got the opportunity, though, was because Woody Marks got banged up during that game. So Nick Chubb just naturally took over for him. Prior to last week, guys, Woody Marks was getting about 70% of the work. He still had 20 out of the 29 opportunities for the running back position, so we like that there for him as well. Even last week, guys, he played in 56% of the snaps. So that's kind of my long way of saying I think that if we are going to get around 70% of the work for Woody Marks, like we have seen him get, then I do like him to get 46.5 for his over rush yards, even though it's a difficult matchup. And if you are worried about the matchup, I think going with his over 13.5 rush attempts then ends up making a decent amount of sense as well. And we do see, guys, now 4 straight games where he's gotten the over. And that is actually very important because that is really when he started to take over really as the true RB1. He's gotten that over. And so I do end up liking that bet a decent amount here tonight. And especially with it being a lower scoring game and a close game, like that to me tells me it should be more of a run heavy game for both teams. The one concern with that would be if that doesn't end up happening, that the clock's going to be rolling a bunch. And so let's go ahead and get into Kareem Hunt now. So for Kareem Hunt, I actually really like the idea of betting on his over 11 rush attempts. The biggest question mark last week was, would Isaiah Pacheco being back take some workload away from Kareem Hunt? It didn't necessarily do that. Kareem Hunt did see his workload go down a little bit, but he still basically had a 70-30 split between him and Isaiah Pacheco. Now, that could end up being more of a 60-40 split, but I think they're pretty comfortable getting Kareem Hunt the football, and I think he has looked better than Isaiah Pacheco. It's not a lock and load bet by any means, but a lot of people are getting to his over rush yards or his over rush attempts, and I think that's the right move. So yeah, guys, I'm never really one that likes to go off the popular tab because people are just being lazy bettors and just betting off of the last 5-game average. As you guys can see right here, that's literally all people are doing. They're not adjusting for the matchup at all or the potential that Pacheco could get going. But I do kind of agree with this. I think this is a little bit too low. And it does go hand in hand with betting on him to get over 11 rush attempts. He's gotten that over 3 straight games now. It's not a lock and load bet by any means, but he did that against Denver, which is a similar matchup. Now, if you just want to go with his over rush yards, I get that. Pacheco, we did see he only had 3 rush attempts against Dallas, which he should have been able to get a little bit more work in that game. Now, if you were to want to bet on Pacheco, guys, I actually think the better opportunity would be with his receptions. He got 2 targets last week, had a 30% route share, but I don't want to do that. So I think the safest bet is going to be going with Kareem Hunt. And then another player that I do like betting on in this game, if because it's a one-game slate. Like, I probably wouldn't be placing this bet if it wasn't for that, but it's Jaden Higgins to get over his receiving yards. Now, the concern that we have is the matchup, and they are actually spreading the snaps out a decent amount between him, Xavier Hutchinson, and also Christian Kirk. So even though he has been the receiver number 2, it is tough to imagine him getting more than the 60% route share that he's been getting. Now, maybe if it ends up being a game in which the Chiefs are winning by more than 4 points, the Texans are trailing from behind, where they're having to do a little bit more 11 personnel, then maybe Higgins gets a little bit more. But even if he only gets 60% route share, even in this tough matchup, I don't mind this bet. And so we do see that over the past 4 games where he has also seen that expanded role, he has gotten this over in every single game thus far. Now, this is the most difficult matchup, don't get me wrong. Maybe CJ Stroud struggles. That is a little bit of a concern for sure. If you didn't want to go with over his 35.5 receiving yards, you could go with his over 3.5 receptions instead. This is an interesting bet to me because if he does get that over receiving yards, I think it's partially going to be because he got over 3.5 receptions. And again, we do see over the last several games, he has been able to get this over. Now, it was a different quarterback for 3 of these. CJ Stroud, I don't want to say he looked worse than Davis Mills, but I like the pass catchers a little bit more under Davis Mills, and that might actually be because they're having to throw the football more. But yeah, I think this is actually a better bet just because of the boosted payout here for Higgins to get over 3.5 receptions. And then actually just sticking with the Houston pass catchers, Hutchinson played in 55% of the snaps last week, 4% more than Jaden Higgins for what it's worth. He ended up getting 5 targets in that game, 2 receptions there. I think his line should be at 2 receptions. And maybe at 2 receptions, you would be betting on the under because it wouldn't be likely for him to get 3. But he got 5 targets last week. And I think at 1.5 receptions, that's just too low. And so I do like that. Again, what we don't like, the low game total and also the weather. And so I still think this ends up being a decent bet for us, though. And then while we are talking about just the receivers in general, I do think the lines that we are getting for Nico Collins are correct. But don't be surprised if he ends up having a better game. He ended up with 174 air yards against the Colts. Now, the Colts defense has been defeatable via receivers. Nico Collins was one of my favorite receiver plays last week on the main slate for DFS purposes. He did end up getting a lucky touchdown rushing the football, but he had 10 targets, 5 receptions, 98 receiving yards. And so maybe if you're just betting on Nico, you would want to get to his over receiving yards. Okay, the projection data likes it a little bit more. All the other sports would basically have it at 68.5. So maybe a slight edge there, but basically a 50-50 split. Could ultimately just depend on the game script again. Then we'll go ahead and just take a peek at the best bets that we were getting here for this game, mostly just looking at PrizePicks and Underdog. Hunt under fantasy score, Pacheco under fantasy score. I would choose one of those two. I don't mind either of them. Again, I do think Hunt over his rush yards is a good bet, but he could still end up getting his under fantasy score. Xavier Worthy, I'm a little bit indifferent about that, but for the matchup, if you adjust out his fantasy score based off his role, I wouldn't hate that. An interesting bet to me is actually Patrick Mahomes is favorited to get under 1.5 passing touchdowns, which actually leads me into a pretty interesting bet that we were getting with Mahomes for his fantasy score, specifically on Underdog, where they have it at about 19. So a little bit too high there. I actually like the under bet a little bit more on Underdog there, assuming he doesn't throw for 2 passing touchdowns, given the fact that Vegas doesn't expect him to. And then for Houston, guys, we are going to see Xavier Hutchinson for under 4 for his fantasy score is okay. If you guys want to get to his over 1.5 receptions, obviously you wouldn't bet that. If you think he could struggle in this matchup, you would bet on his under. Dalton Schultz under, Woody Marson. We're getting a lot of decent under fantasy scores. So if this does actually end up being a lower scoring game, I actually like the idea of using all of these under fantasy scores. Okay. It's a very low game total, very great defenses, maybe not a lot of touchdowns scored. And so I do like the opportunity of betting on those. So I will be doing that. And we could just do it right now. So just these 4 maybe we want to get to. We'll go back into KC. We could do Hunt, we could do Worthy, and we could do Pacheco as well. I'm just going to do those 6. So if we're looking at a bet of the day for PrizePicks, it is going to be this bet where we are getting a 1% edge on PrizePicks, okay? I also have 2 other bets that I think are good traditional sportsbook bets as well. And then we'll start out here, though, with the Underdog bet slip that I do like. Again, Patrick Mahomes under his fantasy score. And I do like Jaden Higgins to get over 3.5 receptions. I think that ends up being a good bet for us. And then I will be going with the 2 running backs here as well, guys. As I mentioned, I think those are good attacking opportunities for us on this slate. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. If you guys would like access to any of the 9to5sports.com tools, PrizePicks Optimizer, Underdog Optimizer, NFL DFS tools, NBA DFS tools, all the tools available for you guys for a low monthly cost of $10 a month, check out 9to5sports.com today. Use promo code KEEPCASHING to get 20% off your first month as well. That's going to do it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.